telling you that.
I've got it on my screen, so I'm waiting for it to load.
All right, I think we're good now. I see it on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I don't see it yet on my end, but maybe there we go.
Okay. Awesome. Hi everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to the impacts of domestic violence with our conversation with Peace Over Violence. I want to give a special thank you to the people who came to the first event on what domestic violence is. And yeah, I hope you all learned something new this time around as well. And I'm going to pass it over to Veer from Health and Wellness.
Thanks, Louise. Today, we're doing part 2 of our conversation around domestic violence, and today's conversation is around the impact of domestic violence on our communities, on our families. So I have Federico Carbona, Teresa Duke-Mijian, and Esmeralda Galvan here today to talk more and to have this conversation with us, this really important conversation as we end October and Domestic Violence Month. So please continue to put your questions into chat as we start this off with Federico.
Hi, and thank you for having us again. And this this time we're gonna talk, we're gonna converse about the impact of domestic violence. Okay, rather than making a formal presentation, let's just talk. And so we are welcoming questions, comments on the chat. So reach out to us and we're gonna try to answer your questions. And if we can't, we can always give you our contact information, and we promise that we'll have an answer for you later on. Okay? Not everybody knows everything, right? All right. So why we don't start by just go? Let's just go to right to the point. What is the impact of domestic violence and sexual violence? And basically, the impact is that in the way that the person develops maladaptive ways of dealing with themselves, dealing with others, and with reality, with their reality. Okay, maladaptive ways, for example, difficulty trusting others again, social isolation, difficulty seeking help, hypersensitivity to physical contact. You know, people become very sensitive, jumpy, increase in medical, emotional, and mental health problems, especially depression, anxiety, PTSD, poor affect regulation, so inability to regulate emotions because the nervous system has been affected, is dysregulated. Problems with coordination and balance, problems with academic achievement for children, and for children, oppositional, antisocial behaviors, for example, as well, and difficulty planning for the future. Okay, so basically, these are the consequences or direct consequences of domestic violence, sexual violence. Okay. Any comments on this? I don't want to be talking or just talking by myself, right? Any comments on this? This is very important. This is what I see the most in clients in our agency. Our agency sees hundreds of people, and most of what we see is emotional dysregulation. PTSD is that the vast majority of diagnosis there. And of course, the matter of trust, the social isolation, things like that. and social isolation comes from a strong sense of guilt and shame. And this is very interesting because when we talk about victims, survivors of domestic violence, so sexual violence, um, we talk about their they being the recipients of the attack of that criminal act, but they are the ones who develop this sense of shame, a strong shame, and it's because this particular type of violence is direct affects us directly in our sense of trust and our sense of attachment to ourselves, to others. That's why it's so disruptive, and so the sense of shame is so strong to the point that people prefer to isolate, even no matter how extrovert people might be. um, Isolation will be a natural consequence of this of the consequences of domestic violence, sexual violence.
Federico?
Yeah.
So, what is, in your experience, especially working with peace over violence, how long, or what is the process um, to I can't think of the word, like, not fix, but to come back to what it used to be before the trauma happened? What is the procedure, or how long does it take for somebody to come back to themselves?
Uh, well, that requires a very complex answer because each case is different. But if I can share my screen, I can show you a graphic that will help us to explain this better. Let me do this. Okay. So can you see here? This is the human body. And this is what happens when there is someone that is impacted by domestic violence, by the fear. So remember this: trauma is triggered by fear, a frightening experience, and especially for children that witness domestic violence, this is very traumatic, okay, because it's full of fear. So when fear happens, and it's here in this area of the brain that the fear is experienced, immediately what happened here, this is the prefrontal cortex, or better say the rational brain. The rational brain disengages. If you think of a car, for example, the rational brain will jump to the back seat, and the emotional brain will be in charge. When the emotional brain is in charge, what happens is that the whole self, the whole body, goes into defensive mood, meaning the stress levels go to the roof. Okay, and you can see here it goes to all the parts or critical parts of the body: the heart, lungs, larynx, the thyroid, the face, your brain, and your guts especially. One of the things that most people don't know is that our uh, stomach and guts are what is considered the second brain, because the brain and our guts are connected in a very deep way, that most of the hormones that we have, the serotonin, oxytocin, and things like that, are produced in our guts. 80% of those hormones are produced here in our guts. So that's why when there is fear in here, in this part of the brain, we feel it here. Okay. So, and that's why when the stress levels rise to a very dangerous levels, what happens is that all the resources that we have in our bodies, all the resources that our brain commands, go to defend against the enemy. The enemy is whatever it is that is causing fear. Okay. So imagine a body that all the time is in this constant alert. What happened to this body? This body needs all these resources to function, right? For example, in our guts, we need to make the digestion. We need to feel calm. So the body resources will fight cells that are sick, cells that carry on disease, like cancer, for example. But what happened with this person is fighting and fighting and fighting in a fighting mode all the time because of fear, in a protective mode because of fear. All those resources are here to comply with the brain commands of defending, protecting. All right. So, and that's one of the issues here, that people that have lived in for a long time with PTSD, in a constant alert of, in a constant state of alertness, what happens is that not only they develop PTSD for a long time, but what happens is that they develop autoimmune illnesses, meaning cancer and illnesses like that. Okay, and that takes time to take care of that. In PTSD, for example, what happens is that when the emotional brain here is locked down and in charge, okay, and the rational brain is sent to the back. No, I'm not talking about physically, right? This is just expression. Um, when the emotional brain is in charge, what happened is that the emotional brain is gonna start interpreting reality, the gestures of other people like aggression, even though those people are expressing neutral or kind gestures. The brain of the person that is in a state of alert is going to interpret those as aggression, and because of past experiences. And we have people that have been had spent years of their lives living with PTSD, and they have developed as well a series of illnesses as a consequence of that. So one of the things that we need to do is to help the person to treat, to deal with this irrational, let's call it that way, irrational way of seeing life. Okay, we help the person to identify what is the cause of that state of alertness, and where that cause comes from. If it's domestic violence, what happened? If it's domestic violence happening right now or happened in the past few months of years, or if it's domestic violence that the person witnessed as a child, for example. Okay. So it takes some time to help a person that has developed PTSD in a domestic violent relationship. But it's worse if that person also brings a history of trauma from childhood. Okay.
We got a comment in chat. Somebody wrote, wow, so being stressed and fearful for long periods of time is linked to cancer?
it is, I'm not saying that leads to cancer. What I'm saying is that the resources of the body is going to be so distracted from their normal function that that will allow cells that carry on disease to go through our body with no defenses, because all our resources are focused on uh, that state of alertness. Okay. So yes, some people will develop cancer, some other people will develop uh, other type of autoimmune illnesses, but this is what studies show. Yes.
It depends of the body, right, Federico? It could be affect to the kidney, to the heart, to the liver. It depends, you know. When we don't express, you know, our feelings, our fears, those emotions, then what is gonna happen? And like Federico says, you've been, you know, for so long. Imagine everything is in here. Everything is inside. That's why the therapist, you know, that is one of the uh, things they do, right, Federico?
Right. So we have to consider as well that genetics. Okay. One of the things that we explain to um, uh, survivors of domestic violence with children is the way to understand the child as well. And one of the things that we want them to understand is that genetics are triggered by a series of factors, and domestic violence could be one of those factors. For example, when we hear that the brain is fully formed, you know, or done at age 25, 26, more or less, right? But actually, the brain is done and actually and fully formed at age 10. When the child enters puberty, what happens is that at that particular time, the brain is bombarded with by all this humongous amount of hormones and genes. That's the age where everything is triggered and goes to the body, and you know, and so the brain goes into reconstruction mode. Okay, the brain goes into reconstruction mode, and that's until the age 25. That's what happens. So while the brain, especially the part right here, this area that is the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that is still developing because of all these hormones and genes that this part of the brain has to deal with. Okay, so that makes the thinking process and the decision making process a little slower than for an adult, for example, over the age of 26. Okay, a little slower. And that makes the emotional brain, the limbic system that is called the emotional brain as well, to be practically in charge. That's why we see that our teenagers, for example, are highly emotional, right? Because they respond right away with emotions and the way that they feel, right? And they mimic the emotions that they see around as well. That's why, because the emotional brain is faster than the rational brain at that age, while there is still accommodating. So genes are always present, not necessarily, you know, make a big deal of something that they are carry on. But when the body is in high levels of stress for long periods of time, there are certain markers in the genes that can be triggered, and that's when, you know, cancer cells find a way of reproducing themselves and things like that. So it depends of the person. It depends of the person's biology. It depends on the person genetics. Is the person is it depends on the person resilience as well. Okay, and emotional self, the way that you see yourself, the way that you see the world, uh, makes an impact as well in the way that your physical body um, manages the consequences of trauma.
Thank
We
you.
actually, oh.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Okay, I was gonna just let him know that we also have another question. I know, sorry, we have a presentation, but we have a question on does trauma affect women and men in in different ways or the same?
Well, studies show that in the vast majority of cases, it is um, because mostly females are in 90% of the cases, or sometimes more, uh, with more cases reporting right now, that those numbers are changing a little bit. Um, but what we see more is PTSD because of domestic violence and sexual assault in females is more pronounced. And in the way that they are managed is different. It's different because we are wired in a different way. And we are wired according to what our environment when we were children told us what our roles are. For example, in androcentric or um, male privilege culture on society, okay, um, the from very early in life, a child is told what is his or her role. If you are a boy, okay, stand up. Boys don't cry, right? Be a man. If you are a girl, and then your environment starts conditioning to what your role is, um, and according to that is that people see themselves as well as adults, and the resilience that they have is the level of resilience depends on their role as well. uh, you know so if a mother, for example, with children, their resilience, their degree of resilience is high. Why? Because the responsibility is not only to themselves but to their children. So mothers are incredible strong, and incredibly equipped to deal with these adversities and circumstances of life. Why? Because they have a natural responsibility to their children that is extension of themselves. Okay. uh, Men responsibility comes from the role of being a protector, of being in as I said, in male privilege environments and cultures and families. The role is you are the strong, you are the one who has to protect your sister when you are a child. Then mom from the bad guys if mom is separated or is single, and then your girlfriend, and then your partner, right? So, and that carries on a lot of responsibility as well. So in the way that people react to PTSD is different. In the way that they are treated is different as well. So that's what we see at trauma-informed counseling is about having a holistic approach. It's not just about, okay, this is the way it works. Someone comes from a domestic violent relationship. Oh, we use this uh, this particular therapy, and that's the one size fits all kind of thing. No, that's not a way. What we have to do is that we have, that's why we have we conduct a clinical interview with a person first to see where that person is coming from, what's happening to her or him, what are the circumstances, where is the family of origin, you know, a little bit, give us a little hints of what was going on there. What is that, how do you feel about yourself, how this is affecting you. So we measure all that, and then we measure the symptoms of trauma and the degree of those symptoms. And then we create a treatment plan that is exclusively for that particular person. Okay, this is not about something that we can use from one client to the other and to the other and to the other. No, this is, we can have the experience of one with one particular treatment working well, and that will inform how we're going to see another client as well, you know, and learning more. Trauma is about keep learning and keep learning and keep learning what works and works best for most clients. That answers the questions, I hope.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a good clarification of, like, you know, it's not all the same, that there are certain roles that do fit certain things. And thank you for also adding, you know, what you can do after the fact. So yeah, you can continue on.
Yeah, and we the first thing that we need to see is, for example, trauma means wound. The word trauma is it refers to wound. Okay, and not everyone that goes through a traumatic event becomes traumatized or develops trauma. So those are the things that we evaluate as well. Uh, Imagine this. A traumatic event is like something happened, a car accident, uh, uh, a divorce that affects not only one of the partners deeply, but also the children. Okay, that's a traumatic event. You are disrupting that normalcy, you know, in someone's life. Okay, that's a traumatic event. That means that that partner, that the affected partner or the children gonna become traumatized. We don't know. Maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe not. Okay, so trauma is like a knife. Okay, or a traumatic event, better say, that a traumatic event, the divorce, for example, is like a knife, and the cut inflicted by the knife is what is trauma. Okay, you can have a knife that is a traumatic event and not necessarily make a cut. See, so the cut, the wound, is what is trauma. And not everybody develops trauma. Most people will develop trauma as a result of a traumatic event in their life. And in a matter of 4 to 6 months, they will overcome in a natural way. Why? Because most people, not most people, but at least half of the population are naturally equipped to deal with adversity. Okay? So we go for a period of, you know, mourning, we go through a period of denial, we go through a period of bargaining with ourselves, and finally when we accept our losses, is that we said, okay, time to move on, and it naturally happens. People that are dealing with PTSD because they have developed trauma and developed PTSD or trauma bonding or complex trauma, or has the trauma of development under human development during childhood, those are the kind of people that need trauma-informed therapy. Okay.
Thank you, Federico. We have another question. Is resilience also a stress factor even when there's positive attitudes?
Pardon me, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Is resilience also a stress factor even when there's positive attitudes?
Resilience is not something negative. Resilience is something positive. Is that resilience is that the ability of bouncing back. Okay, resilience is the ability of bouncing back from adversity when something happens. When people that know that things could happen to anyone are resilient. People that carefully focus their attention on being grateful, for example, being positive, and keeping a positive attitude despite their circumstances, you can say that those people have a strong resilience. Okay, and resilience can be cultivated. If your resilience is this size because of bad circumstances in one's life, that person can cultivate resilience. And the way of cultivating resilience is forcing yourself, being aware of what resilience is and what you can do about it. And once your mind is set on that, what you can do is simply to start developing a more positive attitude. You talk to your friends, you talk to your relatives, you talk to family, you talk to your children, saying, okay, every time that mommy or daddy is being negative or making a negative comment, say something about it. So in that way, that person corrects him or herself, and you develop positive attitude. You develop a more positive attitude of yourself, of your strength, and the way that you manage things. It has to develop self-compassion as well, because most people that have resilience is very low is because the self-esteem, also the self-view is low. So there is a way of developing your self, emotional self, increase your self-esteem, your self-view. And at Peace Over Violence, we work with all that. We help. It's part, as I said, the approach to treat trauma is a holistic approach, and we do that. We see the person in so different dimensions, and we work with all these dimensions at the same time. And one of those dimensions is self-view, how the person sees him or herself, and we help them to rebuild that sense of self. Okay. One of the things that's happened during, and Teresa knows this a lot because she sees that in her clients as well, is that when the person has been in for a long time in a domestic violence relationship, they have lost a sense of self. They know how they what their name is, and of course the stories and all of the stuff, but losing your identity, your sense of self, meaning that you have forgotten about yourself. Why? Because you are so focused on pleasing your partner, that you deny yourself. And imagine that happening every single day, month after month, year after year. That's why some people develop not just PTSD, but complex PTSD. That means long-term abuse, long-term fear, long-term distress. Okay, so it's a little complex, as I said, but the good thing is that trauma informed is becoming the norm in most organizations now that helps offers services, mental health services to the community. So there is progress. There is progress, and we are one of those organizations that are fully trauma informed in our services, not only in counseling but also in the help that we offer in the different areas of services that Peace Over Violence offers to the community.
Thank you. I was wondering, you kept mentioning children and trauma, and I've heard this a few times now. When you're abused as a child, you also abuse as an adult. What's the truth there?
Well, studies show that persons or individuals who have been abused as children, they go into abusing others only in 12 to 15% of the cases. 12 to 15%. And it's because severe abuse that they suffer put them in a category of attachment that is called disorganized attachment, meaning that is a very antisocial kind of thing, disturbance of attachment, the way that they relate to themselves, to others, okay, and to their reality. So it's a components of environmental components what make the difference there. You know, there are in most cases the children who have been abused, they do not become abusers. What they're gonna become in not abusers in the sense of, for example, if someone has been sexually abused, that they're gonna go and sexually abuse other children, for example. That won't be the case. As I said, the studies prove that it's only 12 to 15%, and is mostly factored by negative environments, okay, where they develop antisocial behaviors as well. But in the vast majority of cases, what happened is that of course, they're gonna abuse, but they're gonna abuse themselves because they have a poor self-image, you know, a poor sense of self. And when you have a poor sense of self, even though you are pleasing or try to be pleasing to others, you're gonna abuse others as well, but out of your lack of knowledge and your lack of self-awareness. When we are emotionally hurt, the tendency is to hurt those who are closer to us. That's why we're talking about healthy relationships, you know, and the difference between unhealthy intimate relationships and healthy relationships. And healthy relationships any healthy relationship starts with accountability. Accountability is, where am I emotionally speaking? How healthy I am? How dependent on the other person I am or I gonna be? Do I need someone to make me happy? How needy I am, you know, how fearful of abandonment I am. Because all those questions, if you respond in the positive, you need to do some work on yourself so you can really be in a healthy relationship. Because the problem is that one of the reasons that we work so hard with our clients in this multiple dimension approach, holistic approach to treatment, is because emotionally unhealthy people attract unhealthy emotionally people. Okay, when you are self-confident, when you have your self-esteem, you know, in the right place, that is like an, I won't explain it scientifically, okay? But I'm gonna say this is a holistic approach, right? So it's like an aura. People notice that when you are self-confident, when your self-esteem is healthy, is noticeable, and healthy people will feel attracted to you. When someone with a low self-esteem is out there in the world, open to new relationships, especially predators, let's call it that way, have a nose for that, and an eye for people that are vulnerable. And they're going to go and mirror what the needs of that person, so that person can fall for them and they can control them as they want, you know.
Federico, I have a question. How does if a child views or sees one of their parents being um in a domestic violence relationship, how does it affect them when they're trying to build an own relationship when they're older? Like, is there a lot of more trust issues there, or do they have just a hard time being in a relationship with someone else, or is it more leading into codependency?
Great question. Um, One of the things that I have to say is that I seen people um, that have witnessed domestic violence as a child, and and they have come to me in looking to how to deal with their deep depression, for example, anxiety, and I say, okay, let's start looking at that depression, anxiety, and I start digging in where that depression comes from, okay, and what's going on, what makes you depressed right now. Oh, it's because I'm divorcing right now, and look at what's going on, and I want my partner to come back, and this and that, and okay, and so I asked the person to describe the previous relationship, and the previous relationship was pretty much the same thing as the actual relationship that is breaking up right now. Um, the consequence of that is that that person was suicidal for a while, in the previous relationship, and in the previous one, the same thing. Fall for the other person in a very dramatic way, very intense way. Like your whole self is depending on the other person. And when I start digging in with one person in particular, one client in particular, we realized that that person saw gross domestic violence, physical violence, and psychological violence every single day while growing up. So that person is so insecure and so needy that, of course, that person has tremendous attributes, tremendous personal attributes for anyone to fall in love with that person. But the problem is that you stay with that person for a while in a relationship, and you see that kind of neediness, and at the beginning is flattering because you say, oh gee, I'm so good that this person wants me all the time, to be around. But after a while, you don't want to be in that relationship anymore because it's exhausting. It's exhausting for anyone. So everybody just go away, right? So that's the kind of consequences of witnessing domestic violence is horrible. So imagine this. My daughter just got a baby, okay, a couple months ago. And every time that I talk with her, she said, "Oh, Paco is jumpy. What's going on? Oh, sometimes he is sleeping and all of a sudden he, jumps, right? And he starts crying. Okay. And have you been scared while you were, while you pregnant?" And she said, the only time that I was scared to death, when it was when I was involved in a car accident, and I was like 6 months pregnant. So imagine that the mother's impressions, okay, the mother's experiences, the mother perception of danger was transmitted to the baby, to the fetus. See? So imagine that. You can see that in cats as well. When you have a cat that is just, lazy and happy and had babies at home, those little cats are happy and joyful, and you can come grab them and they wouldn't care, But if you rescue a cat from the street, and that cat has a baby, or babies, you're gonna see that those little cats are born with that fear inside, jumpy all the time, especially black cats. That's why I like black cats, because they are always rejected, pushed away, because they are associated with bad things and things like that. So, most people, don't want to see the black cats around and, hush them away. So those cats, are afraid of their surroundings, and the babies are like that. The kittens are born like that. See? So imagine what happens when a couple is fighting, and the kids are listening or perceiving with their bodies. I want you to think about this. Children are like a sponge. They are absorbing everything that's happening around them, even if their brains are not, there with what's going on. But because they are growing, physically and emotionally and spiritually, their whole self is a sponge. They are absorbing absolutely everything. And when the mind doesn't have a memory that something that has happened around them or to them, their bodies remember. Okay? So the impact of domestic violence is huge on children. Huge, huge, huge. So that's why there are parenting classes all over around. When a couple is in a domestic violence relationship and DCFS intervenes, even if one of the parents is the victim or the survivor, they are asked to take parenting classes or domestic violence classes. And I have clients that have came to me and said, "Why ain't that I have to do this? I am the victim. I am the one who survived this." I said, well, it's because this is an opportunity for you to learn more about what is domestic violence, so it won't happen again to you. This is an opportunity for you to learn how your relationship has been affecting your children and what you can do about it to reverse that damage. Okay?
We have one more question. How long could a person who's been affected by trauma through a long period of time to get mentally and emotionally healthier with the kind of therapy such as the one you provide? This might also be a good time to kind of talk about what Peace Over Violence does and how you can help others and more contact information.
Sure. Normally, our organization offers 12 to 15 sessions. I think that other organizations offer 6 to 8 or something like that. We offer 12 to 15, but that's not definitive. We offer, we go client by client, you know, and client with complex trauma can be longer than that. Um, and what we do is that we work with other organizations as well, and we have partnerships with other organizations. And when we see that the person gonna need is stabilized, it has self-aware and has achieved a good level of rebuilding their self, their healthy self, what we do is that we um, refer that person to an organization that will continue with that, with building blocks for the treatment of that person. Okay, why? Because some people need longer um, uh, treatment. So we partner with other organizations to offer that service to victim survivors of domestic violence or and sexual violence as well. Those who have been sexually attacked and those who have been abused, sexually abused as children as well, um, things like that. So Tere, tell us more about what other services our organization offers.
Also, we have a long time support, group support, support groups in healing arts. We have a trauma-informed meditation. Also, DV groups, domestic violence, sexual assault. And we have a for teenagers, for children's also. We have our CalWorks program, and one of the important is that we provide for sign language, American Sign Language. So some of the organization, they don't have that, and we have that groups and individual therapy with sign languages as well.
Yeah, in Spanish and English, we have individual counseling. We have groups in both languages and sign language as well. Online groups right now going. We are one of the organizations in LA that offers online groups. So many online groups, and we planning to open a more diversified groups in the coming year. For example, for survivors of child sexual abuse, for example. In a very particular way that we are processing right now, putting all the pieces together, the empirical evidence-based treatments, that will help us to put a very well designed treatment for survivors of child sexual abuse in groups. So imagine that.
Organization, provide also legal services in family law and immigration for the survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault. Not all the organizations, they provide that, but we do.
Yeah, a little of that things that survivors will need the most, right? We are not a huge organization, but we do a lot with the little that we have.
We have two locations, one in downtown LA and one in Pasadena. I don't know if you want to share the slide, Federico.
Right.
And our email and phone numbers there over there too. We have the 24/7 hotline. Then sometimes you feel sad, scared, or you want to talk with somebody, you can call to our hotline, and You can share the, okay, he's here, yeah. And you can see the 24 hours hotline. Information for Federico, the contact information. My contact information is over there too. Phone numbers. And we are here for you to help you.
Right.
Thank you so much for all that information. It was so helpful and it was so informative. I don't even, it was fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us and to give us not just 1, but 2 days worth of information. Everybody, this is their contact info. Please, I really highly encourage you to take it down. If you or someone you know is in need of help due to domestic violence, Peace Over Violence is here for you. And it's very convenient that there's one location in Pasadena. Again, thank you, Federico, Teresa, Esmeralda. Thank you so much for joining us today. For everybody that joined also through YouTube, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. For
Thank you, everyone. And let me make sure I can end the stream. And, yep.